Airports see thousands of suitcases every single day. Most contain clothes. Some carry gifts. A few hold secrets, but on this particular morning, one suitcase carried something no one was prepared to discover. Officer Mark Jensen was patrolling with his canine partner, Rex, when the German Shepherd suddenly froze. His ears shot up. His hackles raised. And in the blink of an eye, Rex lunged at a black suitcase with a violence Mark had never seen before. Passengers screamed. Security rushed in. The belt shut down. Every alarm began to sound. Was it a bomb? A weapon? A deadly smuggling attempt? But when the suitcase was finally opened, what they found inside wasn't explosive. It was alive and barely holding on. Before we start, make sure to hit like, share, and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories travel. Morning sunlight spilled across the airport terminal, warm and gentle, bouncing off polished floors that glimmered like a calm sea. Travelers moved in steady waves, some dragging suitcases behind them, others clutching coffee cups as if they were lifelines before long flights. It was the kind of morning where nothing felt out of place. Everything was routine, predictable, safe. Officer Mark Roberts walked alongside his partner, Rex the German Shepherd, known across the department for bravery and instincts that rarely failed. Mark sipped his coffee while Rex trotted confidently at his side, nose twitching as he scanned the air for anything unusual. This was their rhythm, their daily patrol, and after years together, they operated with the kind of understanding only true partners shared. Mark gave Rex a gentle pat. "Another quiet day, huh?" he murmured. Rex lifted his head, as if acknowledging the comment, before returning to his calm but alert scanning of the busy terminal. Families gathered near check-in counters. Business travelers typed furiously on laptops, and kids tugged at their parents' jackets, eager to begin their trips. To Mark, it all looked normal. They approached the baggage claim area, where luggage rumbled endlessly on a wide conveyor belt. The mechanical hum echoed through the space, blending with conversations and rolling wheels. Rex remained steady, his posture relaxed but attentive. He had been through this routine hundreds of times, and nothing ever escaped him. Mark checked the time, preparing to complete the first sweep of the morning. Everything seemed unremarkable, no suspicious behavior, no frantic passengers, no alerts from security. Just another peaceful day. And yet, somewhere deep in Rex's instincts, a spark flickered. Something still unseen, still silent waited in the moving river of suitcases behind them. A calm morning was about to end. Rex had always been steady calm, controlled, precise. But just as Mark turned to continue the patrol, he felt the leash stiffen in his hand. A sudden tension shot through it, sharp enough to make him stop mid-step. Rex's ears snapped forward, his entire body freezing as if someone had pressed pause on him alone. "Rex?" Mark whispered, brows tightening. The German Shepherd didn't blink. His gaze locked onto the conveyor belt across the room, staring with an intensity Mark recognized all too well. This wasn't curiosity. This wasn't routine. This was instinct roaring to life. Rex took one slow step forward, muscles tightening beneath his fur. His breathing deepened, nostrils flaring as he pulled in the air again and again, analyzing something only he could detect. Mark followed his line of sight. expecting to see something obvious: an abandoned backpack, a suspicious passenger, anything noticeable. But there was nothing. Just luggage sliding quietly on the belt, passengers chatting in low voices, and airport staff scanning tags. Yet Rex stood unmoving, like a statue carved from tension. "Easy, boy," Mark murmured, lowering his voice as he crouched beside him. "What do you smell?" Rex didn't respond. His tail stiffened, his paws dug slightly into the floor, and his breathing shifted again, shorter, sharper, urgent. Mark felt a chill crawl up his spine. He had learned long ago that Rex didn't react like this without reason. Not once. Not ever. Slowly, Rex leaned forward, sniffing the air with increasing desperation, as if something on that conveyor belt pulsed with a signal only he could hear. Every instinct in the dog's body screamed for attention. Then, without warning, Rex growled. A low, rumbling sound, quiet enough that only Mark heard it, but powerful enough to freeze him in place. That growl wasn't aggression. It was a warning. Mark rose to his feet, scanning the terminal with newly awakened alertness. The peaceful morning felt different now, charged with invisible electricity. Something was wrong, very wrong. Rex knew it, and in seconds. The entire airport would know too. The conveyor belt hummed steadily, churning out suitcase after suitcase in neat, repetitive intervals. Black, blue, patterned, dented, every shape and size rolled past as passengers leaned forward to spot their luggage. But Rex's eyes didn't follow the crowd's rhythm. His stare honed in on one specific point on the belt, long before anything unusual appeared. Then it happened. A single black suitcase, larger than the rest, slid into view. It looked ordinary: smooth surface, reinforced edges, a simple luggage tag flapping gently as the belt pulled it forward. But something about it made Rex's entire body jolt. His muscles tightened. His breath hitched. His ears pressed so far forward they seemed to strain. Mark barely had time to react. Rex exploded into motion. He lunged forward with a force that nearly ripped the leash from Mark's grip. His paws slammed onto the conveyor belt, claws scraping the moving surface as he anchored himself directly in front of the suitcase. The belt kept pushing it toward him, but Rex lowered his head, barking with fierce urgency, refusing to let the suitcase pass. Passengers screamed and stumbled backward. A woman gasped, dropping her coffee. A man shielded his child, pulling him behind a pillar. Within seconds, the calm terminal erupted into chaos. "Rex, off!" Mark commanded, his voice sharp. But Rex didn't budge. His body trembled with intensity, every muscle locked in a protective stance. His bark deepened, frantic yet focused, as if warning everyone around him that whatever was inside that suitcase was dangerous. Mark felt adrenaline surge through him. Rex had reacted like this before, but only to explosives. Only when lives were at stake. Two other officers rushed toward them, hands ready on their belts. "What's going on?" one of them shouted. Mark didn't answer. He couldn't. All he could do was stare at the suitcase. The ordinary-looking suitcase that had triggered an extraordinary reaction. Rex's teeth bared. His stance lowered. His tail stiffened. Whatever was inside that bag, it wasn't normal. And Rex was ready to face it alone. The moment Rex refused to move, Mark knew protocol demanded immediate action. This wasn't a minor alert. This was a full-scale threat response. Mark raised his hand sharply, signaling the closest officer. Shut down the belt now." Within seconds, the conveyor belt screeched to a halt, the black suitcase stopping inches from Rex's claws. Passengers murmured nervously, their voices rising into a wave of fear. Security alarms chimed softly overhead, and airport personnel scrambled into position. Everyone stepped back. An officer shouted, pushing the crowd away from the baggage area. Retractable barriers snapped open, creating a wide perimeter around Rex and the suitcase. Several travelers protested, confused and frightened, but the urgency in the officers' voices left no room for argument. Mark knelt beside Rex, feeling the tension radiating off his partner. The dog's hair stood on end, his stare locked unwaveringly on the suitcase. Mark swallowed hard. He had seen Rex alert before, but never with this intensity. Asterisk, asterisk. Call Explosives Division, Mark ordered. And notify Airport Command. We need lockdown procedures ready. 2 officers rushed off, radios crackling. Another moved beside Mark. Do we have an owner for the bag? Not yet, Mark replied, eyes fixed on the suitcase. But whatever's inside. Rex is terrified of it. The officer blinked. Terrified, Rex? Mark didn't answer. He didn't need to. The trembling tension in Rex's body said more than words could. More officers arrived. Some armed, some guiding passengers to safer zones. Families clutched each other, children cried, and airport staff whispered anxiously, glancing at the unmoving suitcase like it was a ticking time bomb. Evacuate baggage claim. One supervisor barked into his radio. Seal exits A and B. No one move through here until we clear this. Mark exhaled slowly, his pulse pounding as the room emptied. Rex remained planted, unmoving, guarding the suitcase like his life depended on it, and as the echoing footsteps faded, leaving the space eerily quiet, Mark felt a cold realization settle in. Whatever waited inside that suitcase. Asterisk, asterisk, Rex believed it was deadly. The terminal had fallen into a tense, eerie quiet. Only Rex's low growls and the crackle of security radios broke the stillness. Officers moved with rigid precision, their eyes scanning every face in the shrinking crowd. The black suitcase sat motionless on the stopped conveyor belt, yet it felt like the center of the universe. Run the tag, Mark ordered, pointing to the small, slightly crumpled luggage label hanging from the suitcase handle. One officer snapped a photo, quickly typing the details into the system. Seconds crawled by. Each one felt heavier than the last dot. Then the officer's radio chirped. "I've got a match," he said, looking up. Passenger name, Daniel Hayes, age 24. Ticketed on flight 782 to Chicago. He checked this suitcase in less than 15 minutes ago. Mark scanned the quieted terminal. Where is he now? Before the officer could answer, a shaky voice spoke from behind a row of chairs. That's my bag." Everyone turned. A young man stood with trembling hands and eyes wide in fear. He wasn't dressed suspiciously, just jeans, a hoodie, a backpack, but sweat dripped down the side of his face. His breaths came sharp and fast, like someone trying to outrun panicked. Officers immediately surrounded him. "Sir, step forward slowly," one commanded. Daniel raised his hands. I don't understand," he stammered. "What's happening? Why is the dog acting like that?" Mark studied him carefully. The man looked more terrified than dangerous, but fear didn't mean innocence. It could mean guilt. Or something deeper? Is this your luggage? Mark asked firmly. Daniel swallowed hard. Yes. Yes, but I swear I didn't put anything dangerous in it. I packed clothes, chargers, normal stuff. Rex growled again, louder this time, pulling Mark's attention back to the suitcase. The dog's stance hadn't changed, if anything. He seemed even more distressed now that the owner had appeared. Daniel's eyes darted between the officers and the suitcase, his panic rising. I swear, I didn't do anything wrong, he whispered. But Rex didn't believe him, and in that moment, neither did anyone else. Daniel's plea hung in the air, thin and fragile, as if it might crumble under the weight of the silence surrounding him. Officers kept their hands near their holsters, eyes locked onto every twitch of his expression. But Mark wasn't watching Daniel anymore. He was watching Rex. The German shepherd's entire body was trembling, not with fear, but with urgent, relentless determination. His paws remained planted firmly on the conveyor belt. His gaze never shifted from the suitcase. His breathing came heavy, rhythmic, driven by instincts honed over years of life-saving missions. Rex. Heel, Mark commanded, voice low, steady. But Rex didn't move. The dog didn't even flick an ear in acknowledgement. It was as if Mark's voice had vanished into thin air, replaced by a deeper, more primal warning echoing inside Rex's mind. Mark tried again, firmer this time. Rex, heel! Rex growled not at Mark, but at the suitcase itself, as though whatever hid inside was provoking him with invisible danger. The growl rolled through the empty terminal, vibrating in the hollow stillness and chilling everyone who heard it. One officer whispered, "I've never seen him ignore a direct command." Mark swallowed hard. Neither had he. Rex always obeyed, always. But right now, obedience wasn't even a consideration. Something stronger, something urgent anchored Rex to that suitcase. Daniel stepped forward timidly. Look, I don't know what's going on. I swear I didn't pack anything. Rex snapped his head toward him, unleashing a sharp bark that made Daniel stumble backward and fall onto his seat. Officers surrounded him instantly. Mark tightened his grip on Rex's leash, heart pounding. If Rex wouldn't retreat, if Rex believed stepping away meant danger, then whatever was inside that suitcase wasn't just suspicious. It was alive in a way only Rex could sense, and the worst was still ahead. The tension inside the terminal thickened as more officers poured into the area, securing hallways, blocking entrances, and guiding the remaining passengers out in hurried clusters. The once busy airport had turned into a controlled lockdown zone, silent, still, every movement slow and deliberate. Then came the sound everyone had been waiting for, a rapid set of footsteps. Heavy equipment being rolled across the floor. A clipped voice speaking into a radio. The bomb squad had arrived. They appeared like a small army helmets, armored suits, thick gloves, specialized cases, and a robot unit trailing behind them on metal tracks. Leading them was Chief Technician Harris, a man whose calmness under pressure was legendary. He approached Mark with a steady gaze. "K9 alert?" he asked. Mark nodded. "A strong one." "He won't leave the suitcase." Harris glanced at Rex, who remained locked in place like a living barrier between danger and everyone else. "If that dog refuses to back off," he said quietly, "we treat this as worst-case scenario. Officers exchanged uneasy looks. The worst-case scenario meant explosives, or biological threat, or something no one wanted to imagine. Harris motioned to his team. "Set isolation perimeter. Get the robot ready." The metallic device rolled forward, its camera swiveling, mechanical arms poised to inspect the suitcase from a safe distance. Every pair of eyes in the room watched it creep closer to the black luggage, its tracks clinking softly against the tile floor. Daniel trembled violently, tears forming in his eyes. "Please, I didn't do anything," he whispered, voice breaking. Harris didn't look at him. His attention was on the suitcase, on the stillness surrounding it. On Rex, whose fur bristled as the robot approached. Rex growled again, deep, warning, almost desperate. The bomb squad paused. Harris frowned. "That's unusual. Dogs don't react to the robot like that." Mark's pulse quickened. He's not reacting to the robot. He's reacting to what's inside. A cold wave washed over them. If Rex's instincts were right, the danger wasn't mechanical, chemical, or made of wires. It was something alive. Something urgent, and opening that suitcase might change everything. Daniel sat on the bench with his hands trembling uncontrollably, his knees bouncing, eyes darting around like a man searching for an escape that didn't exist. Officers kept a tight circle around him, firm, expressionless, watching every twitch of his muscles. But Daniel wasn't watching them. He was watching the suitcase. His gaze kept shifting back to it, lingering too long, then suddenly snapping away as if he were afraid the officers would notice. Unfortunately for him, they already had. "Sir," an officer said sternly, "we need you to explain what might be inside that bag." Daniel swallowed hard. "Clothes, shoes, my laptop charger. I told you already." Harris approached him slowly. "People don't sweat like that over clothes." Daniel's breath hitched. "I'm scared because the dog's acting crazy. Anyone would panic." But his voice cracked thin, unsteady, full of something that wasn't just fear of the dog. Something heavier. Something like guilt. Mark stepped forward. "Did anyone else handle your suitcase before you checked it in?" Daniel hesitated too long. "No, I mean maybe. I don't know. I was distracted." "Distracted by what?" Mark pressed. Daniel's leg bounced faster. He rubbed his forehead, avoiding eye contact. "Just stressed. It's been a horrible week." Rex suddenly barked once, sharp and direct, pointing his snout directly at Daniel before snapping back to the suitcase. The message was clear. He smelled something on both. Daniel flinched so hard he nearly fell off the bench. An officer leaned toward Mark. "His behavior isn't adding up. He's hiding something." Mark nodded. He had the same sinking feeling. Daniel wasn't acting like someone confused or innocent. He was acting like someone with the truth. He was terrified to reveal. Harris knelt in front of Daniel. "If there is anything inside that bag that poses a threat, chemical, biological, explosive, we need to know now." Daniel shook his head frantically. "I swear, I don't know. I don't know what's happening." But his eyes betrayed him. They flicked to the suitcase one more time. And filled with dread. Rex responded instantly, whining, pacing, desperate, whatever Daniel wasn't saying. Rex already knew. Chief Harris exhaled slowly, then gave the order that made everyone's stomach tighten. "Move it to the isolation bay. Carefully. Two armored technicians stepped forward, guiding the robot to clamp onto the handle of the black suitcase. Rex barked instantly loud, frantic, lunging as if trying to stop it. Mark had to brace himself, gripping the leash tightly to hold Rex back. "Easy, boy." "Easy," Mark whispered, but Rex wasn't calming. He dragged his paws, whining, pulling, his entire body straining toward the suitcase as though something inside was calling to him. Why is he reacting like that? An officer muttered. "He's never acted like this," Mark whispered back. And he wasn't lying. Rex had never shown this level of desperation, not even during bomb alerts. The suitcase jerked upward as the robot lifted it, mechanical arms whirring. The sound echoed through the tense, half-empty terminal like a warning siren. Passengers who had been herded into distant hallways peeked anxiously from behind security gates, their faces pale with fear. Daniel covered his face with shaking hands. "Oh God, oh God. Please, don't." Harris shot him a sharp look. "Now would be a good time to mention anything you forgot to tell us." Daniel just shook his head violently. "I told you, I don't know. I didn't put anything dangerous inside." But Rex wasn't buying it. Neither was Mark. The robot rolled forward, suitcase suspended, heading toward a thick glass isolation chamber built for worst-case scenarios, bombs, toxic leaks, deadly contraband. Officers cleared a path, guiding the machine until it reached the sealed containment area. Rex's barks echoed louder, echoing off the walls, the sound vibrating in the empty air. "Get him back," Harris warned. Mark tried, but Rex dug his claws into the tiles, pulling with everything he had. His eyes locked onto the suitcase as if his soul depended on it. The robot entered the isolation bay. The heavy doors slid shut behind it with a metallic thud. The entire airport fell silent. The suitcase sat alone behind reinforced glass, still ordinary on the outside, but radiating danger in Rex's eyes. Whatever was inside had just been trapped in a box, and everyone waited, breath held, for the truth to reveal itself inside. The isolation bay, the black suitcase rested under bright white lights, every inch of it captured by multiple cameras. Technicians watched from behind thick glass, their eyes glued to the monitors, fingers hovering over controls. The airport had gone dead silent, so quiet that even the faint hum of machines felt loud. Rex stood rigid at the glass barrier, chest rising and falling rapidly. He wasn't barking now. He wasn't growling. He was listening. Mark noticed it immediately. "What is it, boy?" he murmured. Rex's ears twitched sharp, precise, turning toward the suitcase as if he heard something the rest of them couldn't. Harris stepped closer to the intercom mic. "Begin audio amplification. Level 1. A technician adjusted dials, and soft static filled the speakers. Then, something else. A faint sound. So faint it was almost lost in the noise. A soft tap. Everyone froze. "Did you hear that?" One of the technicians whispered. Harris raised a hand. "Amplify. Level 2. The static deepened, then tap, tap, tap. Mark felt the hair rise on the back of his neck. Is that inside the suitcase? Before anyone could answer, the sound came again, slightly louder this time. Not mechanical, not metallic, not anything a bomb or weapon would produce. The room tensed as Harris leaned closer to the speaker. Amplify. Level 3. The sound sharpened, a tiny, fragile whimper. Mark inhaled sharply. No, no way. The whimper came again, weak, muffled, heartbreaking. Rex pressed his nose to the glass, whining softly, tail stiff, eyes full of urgency. Daniel collapsed into his seat outside the bay, his face draining of color. Oh God, no. Harris's face hardened. Someone opened that audio feed again. The technician complied. This time the sound was unmistakable, a soft, tiny cry like a newborn's, barely able to breathe. Everyone in the room went still. The truth hit them like a shockwave. There wasn't a bomb inside that suitcase. There was life struggling, suffocating, running out of time. Rex had known long before any of them did. Chaos erupted inside the control room. Technicians scrambled, officers shouted into radios, and Chief Harris slammed his hand on the emergency release button. "Open that suitcase now," he barked. Inside the isolation bay, the robot shifted instantly. Its metal arm lowered, claw rotating as it gripped the zipper of the suitcase. Every eye in the room locked onto the monitors. Rex stood trembling, his nose pressed against the glass, breathing so fast Mark feared he might choke on panic. The zipper began to move. A slow, agonizing sound. Zip. Daniel buried his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. "I didn't mean, please, I didn't know." "Quiet." An officer snapped, but his voice sounded distant beneath the pounding tension in the room. The lid of the suitcase lifted. Halfway, 3/4, all the way. Then everyone saw it. A small bundle wrapped in a thin, faded blanket. Too small, too still. Harris froze. Oh my God. Mark felt his heart lurch into his throat. "Is that a—" The blanket shifted. A tiny arm frail, trembling, poked through the fabric. A small fist curled. A soft, broken cry escaped. A newborn. Inside a suitcase. Barely breathing. Rex let out a long, desperate howl, pressing his entire body against the glass. It wasn't a bark, wasn't aggression. It was grief, panic, urgent fear. The robot's camera zoomed closer, revealing the infant's pale skin, lips tinged with blue, chest rising in quick, shallow gasps. The blanket was damp with sweat. The air inside the suitcase was nearly depleted. "Move," Harris thundered. "Manual entry. Get medical in there now." Technicians rushed forward, swinging open the isolation doors as paramedics sprinted down the hall, equipment rattling in their hands. The suitcase lay open like a coffin. The infant's cries faded into weak whimpers, each softer than the last. Mark felt his legs go numb. Rex pawed desperately at the barrier, howling again, pleading, begging, because he understood what no one else had sensed until now. Every second counted. Every breath mattered, and they were running out of both. Paramedics burst into the isolation bay, their movements fast and deliberate. One gently lifted the tiny infant into his arms, checking for breathing, pulse, and responsiveness. Another tore open an oxygen kit, placing a miniature mask over the baby's tiny face. The infant let out a faint cry, thin, raspy, barely there. "Severe oxygen deprivation," the medic muttered. "If we'd waited minutes longer." He didn't finish the sentence. Rex whimpered loudly, pacing anxiously along the glass, tail stiff, ears pinned back. Mark knelt beside him, voice low and shaken. "You saved that baby boy, You're the reason we found it in time." But while the medics fought to stabilize the newborn, officers turned their attention to the trembling young man in the chair. Daniel sat hunched forward, fingers clawing at his hair, eyes red and swollen. His breaths came in short, panicked bursts. When Harris stepped in front of him, he didn't look up. "Start talking," Harris said coldly. Now, Daniel's voice cracked instantly. I didn't want to hurt her. I swear, I didn't even know. Didn't know what?" Harris snapped. Daniel swallowed hard, tears spilling down his cheeks. "She told me it wasn't mine, that she was going to get rid of it." I panicked, okay?" Mark stiffened. "Who are you talking about?" "My ex," Daniel whispered, covering his face again. "She disappeared months ago. Then, last night, she showed up at my door with the baby. Said she couldn't handle it anymore. Asked me to take it. I didn't know what to do." Officers exchanged grim looks. Daniel continued, voice trembling. "I didn't have money. I didn't have family. I didn't have anything. I thought if I left her where someone would find her, maybe someone better could care for her." "So you locked a newborn in a suitcase?" Harris hissed. "I left air holes," Daniel cried. "I didn't think. I was desperate. I didn't want her to die." Rex barked sharply, startling Daniel into silence. His guilt hung heavy in the air. The truth was messy, painful, impossible to justify. But one thing was clear. If not for Rex, the infant wouldn't have survived another minute. The paramedics worked quickly, stabilizing the newborn as the officers stood speechless. The chaos had quieted, replaced by a heavy, trembling awe. Mark kept a steady hand on Rex's back. The German shepherd's chest rose and fell rapidly, his eyes glued to the infant, now connected to oxygen tubes. A doctor rushed in moments later, a pediatric specialist from the airport clinic. He examined the tiny baby, his brows knitting tightly. "She was minutes away from respiratory collapse," he murmured. "Another 5 minutes, maybe less." Mark exhaled shakily. "But how did Rex know? No one heard anything at first." The doctor looked at Rex with a mixture of respect and disbelief. "Dogs like him, they're extraordinary. Their hearing can detect frequencies we'll never hear. Their sense of smell can pick up hormonal changes from distress, fear, sometimes even from weakened breathing patterns." Harris folded his arms. "You're saying he sensed the baby was suffocating through a zipped suitcase?" "Yes," the doctor replied. "Some canines south have been known to detect seizures before they happen or smell changes in blood sugar from across a room. A struggling infant trapped in an airtight space. To him, that would have been a scream." Mark felt the weight of the moment settle over him. He looked down at Rex, who sat trembling, eyes locked onto the baby even from a distance. "You knew," Mark whispered. "You felt everything before any of us did." Rex whined softly, leaning into Mark's leg, not in fear, but in lingering urgency, as if he still wasn't convinced the newborn was safe. The doctor added quietly, "Whatever training this dog has, combine that with instinct, bond, and pure heart. That baby is alive because of him." Mark placed both hands on Rex's shoulders. "You're more than a canine," he murmured. "You're a guardian." And Rex, still watching the newborn, gently wagged his tail. The newborn was rushed through the terminal on a stretcher, tiny chest rising in fragile, uneven breaths as paramedics guided her toward the waiting ambulance. The sight of her so small, so vulnerable left the entire airport in stunned silence. Even officers who had faced the worst of humanity felt their throats tighten. Mark and Rex followed closely behind until they reached the ambulance doors. Rex whimpered again, pacing restlessly, unwilling to let the baby out of his sight. A paramedic paused and gently ran a hand over Rex's head. "Don't worry, hero. We've got her now." The doors shut and the ambulance sped away, sirens piercing the heavy stillness. Back inside the security room, the investigation shifted into high gear. Daniel sat at a metal table, wrists cuffed, head hanging low. His earlier panic had faded into a hollow, exhausted emptiness. Officers questioned him relentlessly, piecing together the fractured story of a desperate young man overwhelmed by fear, shame, and a responsibility he never expected. "I didn't want her to die," he repeated through tears. "I thought someone would find her faster if she was out in public. I just didn't know how else to save her." Meanwhile, airport surveillance teams scanned footage tracking Daniel's movements, confirming he traveled alone and identifying the moment he placed the suitcase on the conveyor belt. His story matched the timeline, but the consequences were unforgivable. Back in the terminal, Mark leaned against a pillar, running a shaky hand through Rex's fur. The dog finally seemed calmer, though his ears still flicked at every distant sound, as if searching for the faint cries he'd heard earlier. "You did everything right," Mark whispered, his voice thick with gratitude. "Because of you, that baby has a chance." Officers approached with updates. "Hospital just called," one said quietly. "The baby's stable. Critical, but stable." Mark closed his eyes, relief washing over him. Rex simply sat taller, chest lifted, gaze steady like a guardian who had fulfilled his duty. But the story wasn't over yet. Morning sunlight was breaking through the hospital windows when Adenvin, Mark and Rex stepped quietly into the neonatal unit. The atmosphere felt different here, soft, calm, full of fragile hope. Nurses whispered gently, monitors beeped steadily, and the baby Rex had saved lay in a tiny bassinet wrapped in a warm pink blanket. A small oxygen tube resting beneath her nose. Rex approached slowly, ears perked, tail still. He lowered his head and let out the softest whimper, a sound so gentle it felt like a prayer. The nurse standing beside the crib smiled warmly. "She's a fighter," she whispered. "Just like her rescuer." Mark's chest tightened. "How's she doing?" "Stronger," the nurse replied. "Her oxygen levels are improving. She's responding well, honestly. If she'd been found even minutes later." She shook her head, unable to finish. "Your dog saved her life." Rex sat proudly beside the crib, eyes locked on the newborn with a strange mix of protectiveness and tenderness. It was as if he understood the gravity of the life he had pulled back from the edge. Moments later, a social worker entered. "We'll make sure she's placed with a safe family," she assured. "A loving one. Her future won't be defined by today's fear." Mark nodded, emotion tightening his throat. Rex gave a small bark, soft, approving, before leaning against Mark's leg. The nurse suddenly held out a tiny card. "Her temporary name," she said, smiling. "We thought it was fitting." Mark read the single word written in neat handwriting, "Hope." He looked down at Rex, whose tail gently wagged. "You gave her that," Mark whispered, And as the camera of life pulled back on this moment, this miracle, one thing was certain: heroes come in all forms, even four paws.